The check was cream-colored, heavy stock, the kind you have to specifically request from a bank manager. I could see the zeros from where I stood, 3 tables away. 4 of them, $80,000. I remember the way the crystal chandelier light hit the ink, making it shimmer wetly as my father, Frank, held it up like a trophy. He wasn't just giving a gift, he was performing. He was playing the role of the benevolent patriarch, the successful provider, the hero of the story. "To my princess," he boomed, his voice thick with champagne and self-importance, "because a love like yours deserves a start as perfect as you are." The room erupted in applause. My mother, Linda, wiped a theatrical tear from her eye, beaming at my younger sister, Tiffany. And Tiffany? She accepted the check with the same casual entitlement with which she accepted oxygen. She didn't look surprised. She just looked expectant, like this was the natural order of the universe. I stood in the shadows near the kitchen swinging door, clutching a glass of lukewarm water because I couldn't afford the open bar tip. My hand was shaking. Not from cold, but from a rage so hot and dense it felt like it was cooking my insides. $80,000. That piece of paper represented more than just a wedding budget. It represented my future that they had stolen. Earlier that afternoon, I had parked my car around the block. It was a 2005 sedan with a bumper held on by duct tape and a muffler that sounded like a dying tractor. I didn't want it seen next to the gleaming Lexuses and BMWs of my parents' friends. I had walked 4 blocks in cheap heels that blistered my feet, carrying a gift I had put on a credit card that was already maxed out. I was drowning. At 32, I was working 2 jobs. By day, I was a junior IT support tech, crawling under desks to plug in Ethernet cables for people who made 3 times my salary. By night, I was a freelance coder, staring at a monitor until my eyes burned, trying to chip away at the mountain of student loan debt that was crushing me. I had asked my parents for help 3 days ago. Just a loan, $5,000. My car's transmission was failing, and without a car, I couldn't get to work. If I couldn't get to work, I couldn't pay my rent. It was a spiral, and I was circling the drain. "We just don't have it, Bianca," my mother had sighed over the phone, her voice tight with a fake apology. "Things are tight at the dealership. Your father is stressed. You need to learn to manage your finances better." Things were tight. I looked at the check in Tiffany's hand again, $80,000. "Things are tight," I whispered to myself, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Tiffany was 28. She had never held a full-time job for more than 6 months. She lived in a condo my parents paid for. She drove a car my parents leased. And now she was marrying Chad, a man whose primary talent seemed to be wearing loafers without socks and talking about crypto investments that never seemed to materialize. But Tiffany was the golden child. She was the one who stayed close to home. She was the one who went to lunch with Mom every Tuesday. She was the reflection in the mirror that my parents loved to look at. I was the scapegoat, the independent one, the one who moved 2 hours away to go to a tech university because I wanted a career, not a country club membership. And in my family, independence wasn't viewed as an achievement. It was viewed as a rejection. I watched Chad wrap his arm around Tiffany, kissing her cheek. The crowd awed. "I want to thank Mom and Dad," Tiffany squealed into the microphone, "for making my dreams come true. We're going to have the most amazing destination wedding in Bali." Bali. They were spending 80 grand on a week in Bali while I was eating instant ramen and praying my car started every morning. The injustice of it wasn't just about the money. It was about the value. They were assigning a value to us right there in front of everyone. Tiffany was worth a fortune. I was worth nothing. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped. It was Aunt Carol. my mother's younger sister. She was the black sheep of her generation, just like I was of mine. She wore a simple gray dress, no jewelry, and her face was lined with a kind of weary wisdom. She rarely came to these events. "Breathe, Bee," she whispered, using my childhood nickname. "Just breathe." "Did you know?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Did you know they were giving her that much?" Carol's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked at the check, then back at me. "They are who they are, Bianca," she said softly. "Don't let them break you. You have something they don't." "What?" I snapped, too angry to be polite. "Debt? Anxiety?" "Dignity," Carol said, "and a brain. Use it." She squeezed my shoulder and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I didn't know it then, but Carol was already planting the seeds for my salvation. I looked back at the head table. My mother was laughing, her head thrown back, basking in the adoration of her friends. "Oh, we just want the best for our girls," I heard her say. Our girls. Plural. As if I didn't exist. As if I wasn't standing in the corner wearing a dress from a thrift store, calculating how much gas I had left in the tank. I couldn't stay. I couldn't watch them cut the cake. I couldn't watch Tiffany preen. I needed to leave before I started screaming and didn't stop. But before I left, I needed to do one thing. I needed to ask them, face to face, why? Why her and not me? Why lie to me about being broke? I needed closure. Or maybe I just needed to blow everything up. I finished the lukewarm water, set the glass down on a passing tray, and started walking toward the head table. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every step felt heavy, like I was wading through mud, but I kept walking. Because the sad, pathetic girl who begged for crumbs was about to die in this ballroom, and someone else was about to be born. The music was loud, a jazz quartet playing a smooth cover of a pop song, but as I approached the head table, the sound seemed to drop away, replaced by the rushing of blood in my ears. My father saw me first. His smile faltered just for a fraction of a second before he plastered on that public-facing grin he used for customers at the dealership. "Bianca, you made it," he said, too loudly. "We didn't think you'd drive all the way down in that vehicle of yours." Tiffany giggled. "Yeah, Bee, did you park it out front? The valet looked confused." I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I walked right up to the edge of the table, ignoring the guests flanking them. I looked directly at the check still resting on the tablecloth near Tiffany's manicured hand. "Things are tight," I repeated, my voice steady, though my knees were shaking. "That's what you told me on Tuesday, Mom, when I asked for a loan to fix my transmission so I wouldn't lose my job. You said things were tight." The table went quiet. My mother's smile vanished. Her eyes darted around to see who was listening. "Bianca, this isn't the time," Linda hissed, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Don't make a scene." $80,000, I said, pointing at the check. "You lied to me. You told me you were broke." "We didn't lie," my father said, his face reddening. "This is different. This is a wedding. This is a life event." "My job is a life event, Dad." "My livelihood is a life event." My voice was rising now. I couldn't help it. "I asked for $5,000, a loan. I would have paid you back with interest. You just gave her 80 grand for a party." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Bianca, are you seriously making my engagement about you? You are so selfish." Selfish. The word hung in the air. I looked at my sister in her designer dress with her ring that cost more than my entire year's salary. Then I looked at my parents. "I worked 3 jobs in college," I said, my voice trembling with the effort to keep it level. "I have $43,000 in student loans. I have never asked you for anything until this week. Tiffany has never paid a bill in her life. How is this fair? My mother stood up. She was a small woman, but she knew how to make herself feel big. She leaned over the table, her face contorted with a look of pure disdain. "You made your choice, Bianca," she spat. "My choice? You chose to leave," she said. "You chose to go to that expensive tech school instead of the state college here. You chose to move away. You chose a career over family." I stared at her, stunned. I chose to get an education. I chose to build a future. "And look where it got you," she said, looking me up and down with a sneer. "Begging for money in a cheap dress while your sister builds a family. You don't understand loyalty, Bianca. You don't understand sacrifice." "Sacrifice?" I choked out a laugh. It was a dry, brittle sound. "I am the only one who sacrifices." "You don't deserve help," my father cut in, his voice final, "because you don't appreciate what you have. You think you're better than us with your degrees and your coding. Well, if you're so smart, figure it out yourself." "You want money?" Mom added, leaning closer. "Earn it. Stop looking at your sister's plate and worry about your own empty one. Honestly, Bianca, you're an embarrassment." Something inside me broke. It wasn't a loud crack. It was a silent, clean severance. It was the sound of the tether that had bound me to them. The hope that if I just worked hard enough, if I was just good enough, they would finally love me, snapping. I looked at them, really looked at them. I didn't see parents anymore. I saw vampires. I saw 3 people who fed on my insecurity to make themselves feel superior. And in that moment of absolute clarity, I remembered something. My phone. It was in my hand, held down by my side. I had a habit of recording voice memos for coding ideas. I had tapped the record button instinctively when I walked up, hoping to catch a stray comment to analyze later in therapy. I looked down. The red counter was ticking, 0214. They didn't know. The tears that had been threatening to spill suddenly evaporated. A cold, metallic calm washed over me. It was a sensation I had never felt before. It was the absence of love, and paradoxically, it was the most freeing feeling in the world. "Okay," I said. My mother blinked. She had been expecting a fight, tears, a tantrum. She wasn't expecting, "Okay? Okay?" she repeated. "You're right," I said, my voice void of emotion. "I chose a career, and I'm going to keep choosing it. You said I don't deserve help? Fine, I won't ask again. But remember this moment. Remember exactly what you said to me." "Is that a threat?" Tiffany laughed nervously. "No," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "It's a receipt." I tapped the stop button on my phone, slid it into my purse, and turned around. "Bianca, walk away and don't bother coming back for Christmas," my father shouted after me, trying to regain control of the narrative. I didn't turn back. I walked out of the ballroom, past the ice sculpture, past the gift table, and out into the cool night air. I sat in my beat-up car, the one with the failing transmission. I put the key in the ignition and prayed. It sputtered, coughed, and finally roared to life with a rattle that shook the whole frame. As I drove away from the country club, leaving the lights and the music behind, I made a vow. I would never, ever let them see me bleed again. I was done being the daughter. It was time to become the architect. I didn't go home to my apartment. I drove to a 24-hour diner, ordered a black coffee, opened my laptop, and started to code. I worked until the sun came up. The next 2 years were a blur of gray. I didn't go to Tiffany's wedding. I heard through a cousin that it was lavish, excessive, and that Tiffany had changed dresses 3 times. I also heard that my parents took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for the overages. I didn't care. I blocked their numbers. I blocked them on social media. I became a ghost. My life was stripped down to the bare essentials, survival and code. I moved out of my apartment and into a basement studio that smelled perpetually of damp earth and mildew. The rent was cheap enough that I could throw every extra penny at my student loans and the credit card debt I had racked up keeping my car alive. I ate instant noodles until the sodium made my fingers swell. I drank office coffee to skip buying meals. I wore the same 3 outfits to work every week, rotating them so people wouldn't notice. But in that darkness, my mind sharpened. I was building something. I called it SafeLog. Working in IT support, I saw how careless small businesses were with their inventory and data. They used spreadsheets that broke, sticky notes that got lost, systems that were open doors for hackers. I wanted to build a security-focused inventory management system, something bulletproof, something unshakable, like I was trying to be. I worked 16-hour days, 8 hours at my day job, crawling under desks, 8 hours at night, sitting on a mattress on the floor, typing until my fingers cramped. The silence of my life was deafening, but it was peaceful. No criticism, no comparisons to Tiffany, no gaslighting. One rainy Tuesday, about 8 months after the snap, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in handwriting I recognized. It was Aunt Carol. I almost threw it away, thinking she was flying a peace flag for my mother, but I opened it. Inside was a single page of handwritten text and a photocopy of an old bank statement. Dearest B, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. I am not writing to ask you to forgive them. I am writing to give you ammunition. Your grandmother, my mother, left a trust fund. It wasn't millions, but it was significant. It was meant for the education of her granddaughters, both of you. I found this statement in Mom's old filing cabinet when I was helping them clean out the garage years ago. I stayed quiet because I was a coward and because I didn't want to lose my sister. But seeing them hand that check to Tiffany, that money wasn't from Frank's dealership, B. That was your grandmother's money. That was your money. They forged the documents to bypass you. I can't prove the forgery yet. They destroyed the originals. But I know the truth. Keep working. Keep building. When you are strong enough, come find me. Love, Carol. I stared at the photocopy. It was dated 5 years ago. A withdrawal of $40,000 for educational expenses for Tiffany. Tiffany, who dropped out of 3 different colleges. They hadn't just favored her. They had stolen from me to feed her. I taped that letter to the wall above my monitor. It became my fuel. Every time I wanted to sleep, every time I wanted to quit, I looked at that letter. I didn't want revenge in the form of a screaming match. I wanted revenge in the form of power. I needed a lawyer, a good one, and lawyers cost money, so I needed to get rich. I finished the beta version of SafeLog 14 months after the engagement party. I needed beta testers, but I didn't have a marketing budget, so I used my day job. Whenever I fixed a computer for a small business owner, a bakery, a mechanic, a boutique, I would pitch them my software. It keeps your data safe, I'd say. It tracks every penny. It makes sure no one can steal from you without you knowing. I was obsessed with the idea of tracking theft, for obvious reasons. Slowly, I got 10 users, then 50, then 100. The feedback was incredible. It was intuitive, it was secure, and it was fast. I was still eating noodles, but I could see the light. Then the crash happened. Not the market, my server. I had too many users for my cheap hosting plan. The system went down on a Friday night. I panicked. I needed $5,000 to upgrade the server capacity immediately, or I'd lose all my clients. $5,000, the exact amount I had asked my parents for. I sat on my floor, head in my hands. I was going to fail. I was going to prove them right. I was a loser. Then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Is this Bianca Harris?" A deep, calm voice. "Yes." "My name is Marcus Sterling. I own a venture capital firm in Seattle. I was at a coffee shop this morning, and the owner was complaining that his inventory system was down. He said it was the best software he'd ever used, and he was terrified of losing it. I asked him who built it." I held my breath. "I looked at your code, Bianca," Marcus continued. "It's elegant." "It's paranoid. I like paranoid security." "Thank you," I whispered. "I want to meet you Monday morning. If this is what I think it is, you're not going to need to worry about server costs ever again." I hung up the phone. I looked at the letter from Aunt Carol. I looked at the moldy walls of my basement. "Monday," I said to the empty room. "Monday, everything changes." I walked into Sterling Capital wearing a suit I had bought at Goodwill and tailored myself the night before. I didn't have a car. The sedan had finally died 6 months prior, so I had taken 2 buses and walked a mile in the rain. My hair was frizzy, my shoes were wet, but my code was perfect. Marcus Sterling was a man in his 50s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. He didn't look at my shoes. He looked at my data. "You built this alone?" he asked, scrolling through the architecture of SafeLog. "Every line," I said. "Why?" "Because I hate thieves," I answered instantly. "And I believe that if you work for something, you should be the one to keep it." Marcus stopped scrolling. He looked at me over his glasses. He smiled. "I'm offering to buy the IP, and I want you to come on as CTO to run the division. We'll integrate this into our enterprise suite." He slid a contract across the table. I read the numbers. I read them again. I thought I was having a stroke. Initial acquisition fee, $3.2 million. Annual salary, $240,000 plus stock options. $3.2 million. My hands didn't shake this time. I felt a strange heaviness, like gravity had increased. This was it. This was the receipt. "There is one condition," I said, looking up at him. "Oh." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I need a lawyer, a shark. I need to structure this so that my family, my parents and my sister can never, ever touch a cent of this. Even if I die tomorrow, I need ironclad asset protection." Marcus leaned back and nodded. "I know just the firm. We'll set up a trust, offshore holdings, the works. You'll be a fortress, Bianca." I signed the paper. The money hit my account 3 days later. I stared at the balance on my phone screen. $3,200,412. I didn't go buy a Ferrari. I didn't book a trip to Bali. The first thing I did was pay off my student loans. $43,000. Gone in a click. The second thing I did was pay off my credit cards. The third thing I did was call Aunt Carol. "I'm ready," I told her. "Tell me everything about the trust fund." Over the next year, my life transformed. I worked harder than ever, but now I was working as a leader. I hired a team, I moved into a high-rise apartment with security doormen, and I met Ethan. He was an architect. We met at a tech conference where he was designing the venue. He was everything Chad wasn't. Quiet, thoughtful, stable. He drove a Volvo. He called his mom every Sunday, but he had boundaries. On our third date, I told him I wasn't speaking to my family. "I get it," he said, not prying, not judging. "Family is complicated. You have to protect your peace." I fell in love with him because he didn't care about my money. He didn't know about the $3. $2 million when we met, and when I finally told him, 6 months in, he just shrugged. "That's great, B. You earned it. Just means we can order the good appetizers." He was my safe harbor. But even with Ethan, even with the money, I was looking over my shoulder. I knew they were out there. I knew that eventually the silence would break. I hired a private investigator named Vance. I gave him Aunt Carol's letter. "Find the proof," I told him. "I want the original bank records. I want the signature samples. If they forged my name to steal my grandmother's money, I want to know." Vance was expensive, but he was good. He started digging into my father's dealership finances, into the old family accounts. Meanwhile, I focused on building my fortress. Ethan and I decided to buy a house together. We found a property in Evergreen Heights, the most exclusive gated community in the state. It was a sprawling, modern estate, glass and steel, hidden behind 10-foot hedges. It cost $5.3 million. I put down the majority, Ethan contributed his savings, and we were equal partners. It was a symbol that I had surpassed them. My father's dealership was a small fish compared to the ocean I was swimming in now. I remember the day we moved in. I stood on the balcony of the master bedroom, looking out over the city lights. I held a glass of expensive wine, not lukewarm water. "You made it," Ethan whispered, wrapping his arms around me. "Not yet," I said, my eyes scanning the horizon. "They don't know yet. I knew my family." They were narcissists. They could smell success. And like sharks, once they smelled blood in the water, they would come feeding. I just didn't expect it to happen so physically. I didn't expect Tiffany to literally drive right up to my gate. The house in Evergreen Heights was more than a home. It was a statement. 6,000 square feet of minimalist design, smart glass windows that turned opaque with a voice command, and a security system that rivaled the Pentagon. I loved it. I loved the silence of it. Ethan designed a home office for me in the West Wing. It had a view of the mountains and a dedicated server room. This was where I ran my division of Sterling Capital. Life was good. We were discussing marriage. I was looking at rings, buying my own, of course, because I wanted to. We were planning a future that had no room for Frank, Linda, or Tiffany, but the past has a nasty habit of showing up uninvited. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was working from home, reviewing code updates. Ethan was at a job site. My security console chimed. Motion detected at main gate. I glanced at the monitor. Usually it was a delivery driver. Amazon, FedEx, UPS. I saw a beat-up white van. It wasn't a branded truck. It was one of those gig economy delivery vehicles, rested around the wheel wells, exhaust pumping gray smoke. I zoomed in on the camera feed. The driver's side door opened. A woman stepped out, holding a package. She wore a faded, oversized t-shirt and leggings that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, looking greasy. She looked exhausted, worn down by life. I squinted. She turned to the intercom, and the camera caught her face clearly. My heart stopped. It was Tiffany, the golden child, the girl who had an $80,000 wedding in Bali, the girl who was supposed to be living a fairy tale. She looked 10 years older than her 28 years. The sparkle was gone. Her eyes were dull. She pressed the buzzer. "Delivery for Bianca Sterling?" She read the name off the package. I used my company name for deliveries sometimes. She froze. She stared at the name on the label. Bianca? Then she looked up at the house. From the gate, you could see the sweeping driveway, the fountain, the massive glass facade of the main entry. I saw the recognition dawn on her face. She stepped back, looking at the brass number on the stone pillar. She looked at the package again. "Bianca?" she whispered. The high-sensitivity microphone picked it up. She didn't press the buzzer again. She just stood there, mouth slightly open, processing the impossible reality. Her scapegoat sister, the failure, the one who didn't deserve help, lived here? And she, the golden child, was delivering my organic dog food? The irony was so sharp it almost cut me. I sat in my ergonomic chair, my hand hovering over the open gate button. I could let her in. I could walk out there in my silk blouse and show her. I could gloat. Don't, the voice in my head said. That's what they would do. Stay hidden. I watched as she slowly walked back to the van. She didn't leave the package. She threw it into the passenger seat. She pulled out her phone. I saw her fingers flying across the screen. Then she held the phone up, taking photos of my house, taking photos of my gate, taking photos of my car parked in the driveway, a Tesla Model S Plaid. She was documenting. My stomach churned. The peace of the last 5 years evaporated in an instant. She got back in the van, but she didn't drive away immediately. She sat there for 5 minutes, likely calling Mom. I picked up my own phone and called Vance, my PI. "It's starting," I said. "Tiffany knows where I live. She just saw the house." "Okay," Vance said, his voice gravelly and calm. "I have the report ready on the trust fund, Bianca, and I found something else. Something about Tiffany's husband, Chad." "What about him?" "He's broke. Worse than broke. He's in debt to some bad people. Gambling, crypto scams. They are desperate for money, Bianca. That's why Tiffany is driving a delivery van." It all made sense. The lavish wedding, the lifestyle they couldn't afford. They had burned through the stolen money, burned through my parents' support, and now they were hitting rock bottom. And suddenly, they had discovered a gold mine. Me. "They're going to come for me," I said. "Let them," Vance said. "We're ready. But Bianca, you need to prepare yourself. Narcissists don't just ask for money. They feel entitled to it. When they see what you have, they won't think you earned it. They'll think you stole it from them." He was right. I watched on the monitor as Tiffany finally reversed the van and sped off, tires screeching. I stood up and walked to the window. The fortress was strong, but the siege was about to begin. The first 48 hours after Tiffany saw my house were silent. It was the calm before the storm, the time it took for the information to travel, to be digested, and for a strategy to be formed by the family council. I could imagine the scene. Linda shrieking about how I had deceived them. Frank fuming about how I must have done something illegal. Tiffany crying about how unfair it was that she was struggling while I was living in a palace. Then the phone started ringing. I had changed my personal number years ago, but my business number was public. It was listed on the Sterling Capital website. Ring. Unknown caller. I let it go to voicemail. Ring. Unknown caller. Ring. I forwarded all calls from non-contacts to my legal team's screening service, but then the email started. Subject: Family Emergency. From lindaharris62@gmail.com. Bianca, we know where you are. Tiffany told us. I can't believe you've been hiding this from us. Your father is very sick. He needs a specialist, and our insurance won't cover it. We are your family. Call us immediately. I stared at the screen. Your father is sick. The classic manipulation tactic. Medical guilt. I forwarded the email to Vance. Check if Frank is actually sick. Vance replied an hour later. He played 18 holes of golf yesterday and posted a picture of a steak dinner on Facebook. He's fine. His cholesterol is high. That's about it. They were liars to the bitter end. Then came the text messages to my old LinkedIn profile. Tiffany, I saw you. I know you saw me. You think you're so better than me? Mom is crying all day. You have all that and you can't help your sister? My kids need things, Bianca. Sophie needs braces. Kids. I had a niece I had never met. Sophie. That stung. An innocent child caught in their web. But I knew if I gave them $1 for Sophie's braces, that dollar would go to Chad's gambling debts or Linda's Nordstrom account. I didn't reply. My silence infuriated them. It always did. To a narcissist, indifference is worse than hate. Hate implies you care. Indifference means they don't exist. So they escalated. I came home from a meeting to find a car parked across the street from my gate. It was a sedan, Frank's car. They were staking me out. I watched from the security cameras. Frank was sitting in the driver's seat, eating a sandwich. Linda was in the passenger seat, staring at my house with binoculars. Binoculars. It was invasive. It was creepy. "Ethan," I said when he walked in, "don't go out the front gate. Take the back service road." "Are they there?" he asked, his jaw tightening. "Yeah, the stakeout has begun." "I should go out there," Ethan said, moving toward the door. "I should tell them to get off our property." "No," I grabbed his arm. "That's what they want. They want a confrontation. They want drama. If we engage, we validate them. We give them a story." My daughter shouted at me. We stay inside. We record everything. We watched them for 3 hours. Eventually, Linda got out of the car. She walked up to the intercom. She pressed the button. "Bianca," her voice was sickly sweet. "I know you're in there. I saw the lights. Honey, please. We just want to talk. We're so proud of you. Look at this place. We just want to reconnect. We miss our girl." Our girl. The same woman who told me I didn't deserve help. The same woman who watched me leave with nothing. I felt a wave of nausea. When I didn't answer, the sweetness dropped. "Open the damn gate, Bianca," she screeched. "I am your mother. You owe us. We raised you." "You think you can just hoard all this money while we struggle? It's sinful." Frank got out of the car. He looked older, heavier. He joined her. "You ungrateful brat," he shouted. "I know you can hear me. You're hiding in there like a coward." I hit the record button on the console. Save footage. "Keep talking," I whispered. "Give me more." Eventually, a patrol car from the private security firm of the community drove by. They stopped. I saw the officers speak to Frank. Frank pointed at my house, waving his arms. The officer shook his head and motioned for them to move along. They left, but I knew they weren't gone. They were just regrouping. That night, Vance sent me the bombshell. "Bianca," he said on the phone, "I have the bank records. The signature on the trust fund withdrawal? It's a bad forgery. It looks like your mother's handwriting trying to be you. And I found the notary who stamped it. She's a friend of Linda's from the bridge club. We have them on fraud, felony fraud." "Is the statute of limitations up?" I asked, my heart racing. "It's close," Vance said. "But because you discovered the fraud only recently, we can argue the clock starts now. But Bianca, if you use this, you're sending your parents to prison." I looked at the monitor, at the replay of Linda screaming at my gate. "They build their life on my stolen future," I said. "I'm not sending them to prison. They sent themselves the moment they signed my name." "Hold on to it," Vance advised. "Don't fire that bullet yet. Let them make the first legal move. If they sue you, this becomes your nuclear defense." "They would sue me?" I asked. "On what grounds?" "Filial responsibility," Vance said. "In your state, parents who are destitute can sue wealthy children for support. It's rare, but it happens. If they are as broke as I think they are, a shady lawyer might talk them into it." I hung up. I looked around my beautiful, silent house. I was ready for war. The siege moved from physical to digital. They realized yelling at my gate wouldn't work, so they decided to burn my reputation. It started with small things. Phone calls to my office pretending to be concerned relatives trying to reach me for an emergency. My receptionist, bless her, had been briefed. "I'm sorry, Miss Sterling is unavailable." Then they found my employees. They started messaging my developers on LinkedIn. "Hi, I'm Bianca's mother. We're so worried about her. She's having a mental health crisis and has cut us off. Please tell her to call home." It was humiliating. I had to call an all-hands meeting. My family is estranged, I told my team, keeping my voice steady, though I was dying inside. They are attempting to contact me through you. Please block them. Do not engage. I apologize for the disruption. My team was amazing. They were loyal. They rallied around me. But the shame was a heavy cloak. I was a CEO, a leader, and yet I was being treated like a runaway teenager. Then came the flying monkeys. Family friends, cousins I hadn't seen in a decade, people from my hometown. They all started reaching out. Bianca, how could you do this to your parents? They are old and sick. They sacrificed everything for you. I didn't respond to any of them. I just saved every message. My evidence folder was growing by the gigabyte. But the worst was yet to come. One evening, Ethan and I were eating dinner. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a Google alert I had set up for my own name. New Facebook post trending in local community group. I opened it. It was a post by Tiffany. It was long, rambling, and full of emojis. Included was a photo of her crying, holding her daughter, and a photo of my house that she had taken from the van. I never wanted to do this, but I'm heartbroken. My sister, Bianca Harris, now Sterling, has abandoned our family. While she lives in this $5 million mansion, pic below, our parents are on the verge of losing their home. She refuses to help. She won't even meet her niece. We gave her everything, put her through school, and now that she's a millionaire, she treats us like dirt. Please share. The world needs to know who she really is. The post had 400 shares, 1,000 comments. I read the comments. It was a digital lynch mob. What a monster. Money changes people. Karma will get her. How can she sleep at night? My hand shook as I scrolled. They had doxed me. They had put my home on the internet. B, Ethan said, taking the phone from my hand. Stop reading. They're destroying me, I whispered. This could hurt the company, investors, clients. No, Ethan said firmly. This is libel. This is defamation. And now they've done it publicly. He was right. They had stepped out of the shadows and into the light. Get Sterling on the phone, I said, my voice hardening, and get Vance. The next morning, I didn't hide. I walked into my office, pulled up the post on the big screen, and drafted a response with my legal team. But before we could post it, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, area code 312. This is Bianca. Bianca? Ideally, I shouldn't be calling you. A male voice, nervous, whispering. Who is this? It's Chad, Tiffany's husband. I froze. What do you want, Chad? Look, things are bad here, he said quickly. Crazy bad. They're talking about suing you. They found a lawyer who says they can get alimony from you because you're their child. Why are you telling me this? Because they're crazy, he stammered. And because, look, if I help you, can you help me? I just need enough to get out, to leave her. I have debts. Twist number 3. The rat was jumping off the sinking ship. I don't pay blackmail, Chad, I said coldly. No, not blackmail, info. I have the emails between your dad and the lawyer. I have the recordings of them planning the Facebook post to pressure you into a settlement. I can send them to you. Send them, I said. And if they are useful, we'll talk about a finder's fee. Ping. 3 minutes later, files landed in my inbox. I listened to the audio file. It was Frank's voice. We just need to scare her, Linda. Embarrass her. She's obsessed with her image. If we make her look bad enough, she'll write a check just to make us shut up. We ask for monthly support, $5,000 a month. That covers the mortgage and the lease. And if she fights? Linda asked. She won't. She's weak. She ran away, remember? I smiled, a cold, terrifying smile. I'm not weak, Dad, I whispered to the recording. I'm just preparing. The Facebook post was spreading. It had jumped from the local community group to Twitter. A minor tech blog had even picked it up with the headline, "Tech CEO accused of abandoning destitute parents." My PR team was in crisis mode. "We need to issue a statement," my publicist said. "Deny it. Show charity work. Something." "No," I said. "We don't defend. We attack." I sat down with my lawyer, Sterling, no relation to Marcus, just a happy coincidence. He was a pit bull in a three-piece suit. "We file for defamation against Tiffany," Sterling said. "We file a cease and desist against your parents, and we prepare the defense for the filial responsibility suit they are about to file." "Do we release the fraud evidence?" I asked. "The trust fund?" "Not on Facebook," Sterling said. "We save that for the judge. In the court of public opinion, we need something simpler." "I have an idea," I said. I logged into my old Facebook account, the one I hadn't used in 5 years. I didn't write a long, emotional essay. I didn't beg for understanding. I posted one photo. It was a screenshot of the text message Linda had sent me on the day of the engagement party 10 years ago. I had saved it to the cloud. "Linda, don't bother coming back. You made your choice. We don't owe you a dime, and you are dead to us." And below it, I posted a screenshot of the email from yesterday. "Linda, we are your family. We miss our girl. Please help us." I added a simple caption. 10 years ago, when I was broke, I was dead to you. Now that I have money, I'm your girl. Family isn't an ATM. Please respect my privacy and the restraining order that is being filed this morning." I hit post. Then I shared it to the tech blog. I shared it to the community group. The tide turned instantly. People aren't stupid. They recognize hypocrisy. The timestamps told the story. The narrative shifted from ungrateful daughter to gold-digging parents. The comments on Tiffany's post started to change. "Wait, so you kicked her out when she was poor? This looks like you just want her money. Show us the receipts, Tiffany. She just showed hers." Tiffany deleted her post 3 hours later. But the damage to them was done, and the provocation was complete. By humiliating them publicly, I had forced their hand. I had backed the narcissists into a corner, and a narcissist in a corner has only one move left: attack. 2 days later, the process server arrived at my gate. He handed a thick envelope to my security guard. Summons: Frank and Linda Harris v. Bianca Sterling. Complaint for support under Family Code Section 4400. They had done it. They had sued me. I held the lawsuit in my hands. It was heavy. It was malicious. It was a desperate attempt to use the law to enforce the control they had lost. I walked into my office and opened the safe. I pulled out the file Vance had given me, the original bank statements, the forgery analysis, the affidavit from Aunt Carol. "Ethan," I called out. "Yeah?" "Get your suit ready," I said, staring at the documents. "We're going to court, and I'm going to end this." The lawsuit papers were sitting on my kitchen island, a heavy stack of legal threads that felt radioactive. I spent the next 24 hours in a state of hyper-focus, working with Vance and Sterling to assemble our defense. But while we were fighting the war on paper, the physical war arrived at my front door. It was Saturday morning. The sun was barely up over the Evergreen Heights hills, casting long shadows across the lawn. Ethan and I were in the kitchen making coffee, trying to find a moment of normalcy amidst the chaos. Then the intercom buzzed. Not a polite, short buzz. A long, angry, continuous drone. I looked at the monitor. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just a van this time. It was my parents' sedan, parked haphazardly across my driveway, blocking the exit. And they weren't sitting inside. Frank and Linda were standing at the wrought iron gates, shaking them, literally gripping the metal bars and rattling them like caged animals. Tiffany was there too, pacing back and forth, holding her phone up, live streaming. And most heartbreaking of all, a small girl, my niece, Sophie, was sitting on the curb, looking confused and terrified, clutching a dirty stuffed rabbit. "Open the gate!" Frank screamed, his voice cracking. "We know you're in there! Stop hiding behind your money!" Ethan stood up, his face dark. "That's it. I'm calling the police." "Wait," I said, watching the screen. "Let them scream. I want the judge to see this. I want the world to see this." I hit the record button on the console. Linda pressed her face between the bars. She looked unhinged. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes wild. "Bianca, your father needs his medication. We have nowhere to go. How can you be so cruel? We're sleeping in the car because of you." That was a lie. Vance had confirmed they still had their house, though it was heavily mortgaged. This was theater. This was a performance for Tiffany's live stream. "Look at this!" Tiffany yelled at her phone. "My millionaire sister won't even open the gate for her starving niece. Sophie is hungry, Bianca. Do you hear me? She's hungry." I saw Sophie flinch at her mother screaming. "That's enough," I whispered. I couldn't watch the kid suffer. I pressed the intercom button. "Get off my property, or I am pressing charges for trespassing and harassment." My voice boomed through the speaker at the gate. They all froze. Then the reaction was explosive. "You speak!" Frank roared. He picked up a rock from the landscaping border and hurled it at the gate. They all froze. Then the reaction was explosive. It clanged uselessly against the steel, but the violence of the act was shocking. "You ungrateful little witch! I paid for your clothes. I paid for your food. You owe me." "You stole my inheritance!" I shouted back, losing my cool for the first time. "You stole $80,000 from Grandma to pay for Tiffany's party. You think I don't know?" Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. Linda's face went pale. She looked at Frank. Tiffany lowered her phone. They didn't know I knew about the fraud. They thought that secret was buried with my grandmother. But the shock only lasted a second. Frank's narcissism kicked in. He didn't deny it. He justified it. "It was family money," he screamed, spitting as he spoke. "I am the head of this family. It was mine to decide. You didn't need it." "You were always too independent. Tiffany needed us." There it was, the confession. "We have that on tape," Ethan said quietly beside me. "I'm coming over the gate," Frank yelled. He actually tried to hoist his heavy frame up the metal bars. It was pathetic and terrifying at the same time. Sirens wailed in the distance. The private security patrol had called the real police. 2 cruisers pulled up, lights flashing blue and red against the morning sky. Officers stepped out, hands on their holsters. "Step away from the gate," an officer commanded. "She's my daughter," Frank shouted, pointing a shaking finger at the house. "She's holding our property in there." "Sir, step back now." I watched as the officers approached them. Frank resisted. He tried to shove an officer. Bad move. In seconds, my father, the man who always cared so much about appearances, about looking like a pillar of the community, was slammed onto the hood of his car. His hands were wrenched behind his back. The click of handcuffs was audible even through the microphone. "No, you can't do this," Linda shrieked, grabbing at the officer's arm. "We are good people. She's the criminal." "Ma'am, back off or you're next." They arrested Frank for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest. They issued a citation to Linda. Tiffany, seeing the reality of the situation, grabbed Sophie and retreated to her car, turning off her live stream instantly. I stood at the window watching the police car drive away with my father in the back seat. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a deep, hollow exhaustion. This wasn't a family. This was a parasite that had been ripped off, and it was thrashing in the dirt. I turned to Ethan. They're not going to stop. The arrest will just make them feel like martyrs. Now they have a cause. "We have the confession," Ethan said. "He admitted taking the money." "It's not enough," I said, staring at the empty driveway. "We need to bury them in court. We need to make sure they can never come near us again." I picked up my phone and called Sterling. "They just gave us the ammunition. Frank confessed to the theft on tape, but we're not settling. I want to go to trial. I want everything on the public record." The physical war was over. The legal slaughter was about to begin. The weeks leading up to the trial were a masterclass in gaslighting. My parents' lawyer, a slimy man named Mr. Gorski, who specialized in elder law, gave a press statement. He painted Frank and Linda as tragic figures, parents who had sacrificed their golden years to raise a successful CEO, only to be discarded like trash when they became ill and destitute. They were suing me for $5,000 a month in alimony, indefinitely. The law they were using, filial responsibility, was an archaic statute that hadn't been used in our state for decades, but it was still on the books. It stated that if parents were unable to support themselves and the child had the means, the court could order support. On paper, they looked perfect. They had no assets because they had transferred the house to Tiffany's name, a fraudulent conveyance we caught immediately. They had high medical expenses, Frank's high blood pressure and Linda's anxiety, and I had millions. I had to sit for a deposition. I walked into the conference room at Gorski's office wearing a sharp navy suit. Sterling was beside me. Across the table, Linda and Frank sat looking like they were at a funeral. Linda was wearing a threadbare cardigan I recognized from 20 years ago. It was a costume. Gorski started the questioning. "Miss Sterling, is it true your net worth exceeds $10 million? "Objection," Sterling said. "Relevance." "It goes to ability to pay," Gorski smirked. "Miss Sterling, you live in a house with 7 bathrooms, correct? Yet your mother claims she cannot afford heating oil." "My mother," I said, looking directly at Linda, "spent $80,000 on a wedding 10 years ago. She leased a new Lexus every 2 years until last month. If she cannot afford heating oil, it is because of mismanagement, not poverty." Linda sniffed, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "We gave you everything, Bianca. We just wanted you to be happy." "You told me I was dead to you," I said calmly. "I was emotional," Linda cried out. "A mother says things, but you have a heart of stone." The deposition dragged on for hours. They tried to paint me as the villain. They brought up times they bought me shoes in high school. They listed every birthday present they ever gave me. They were itemizing my childhood to send me a bill. But they made a mistake. They got arrogant. During a break, they thought I had left the room. I had just stepped into the hallway, but the door wasn't fully closed. "She's cracking," I heard Frank say. "Did you see her face when we mentioned the house? She's embarrassed. She'll settle. We'll get at least $3,000 a month." "I want 5, Linda hissed. "I need to fix the kitchen, and Tiffany needs help with the baby." "Don't worry," Gorski said. "With the filial law, the judge hates rich kids who abandon their parents. It's an easy win. Just keep crying, Linda." I walked back in. I didn't say a word. I just sat down and smiled. That night, Vance called me. "Bianca, I found it," he said. "The smoking gun." "I thought we had the smoking gun?" "No, this is the nuclear bomb." Remember how I was looking into Tiffany's husband, Chad? Yes. Well, Chad got scared. He sent me a folder. It turns out, your parents didn't just steal your trust fund. They've been running a scheme at the dealership for years, cooking the books, hiding income to avoid taxes, and they took out a life insurance policy on you 3 years ago. I froze. What? They bet on you dying, Bianca. Or at least, they wanted to be paid if you did. But here is the kicker. In the application for the insurance, they declared their assets. They listed offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. They aren't broke, Bianca. They have nearly $500,000 hidden away from the IRS. They are pleading poverty to the court while sitting on a pile of tax-evaded cash. I felt the blood drain from my face, then rush back in a torrent of fury. They weren't just greedy, they were criminals. "Send it to Sterling," I said. "Send everything." The day before the trial, Sterling called Gorski. "We are willing to offer a settlement," Sterling lied. "We're listening," Gorski replied, sounding triumphant. "Our offer is this. Your clients drop the lawsuit, admit to fraud, and pay back the $80,000 trust fund with interest, or we go to court tomorrow." Gorski laughed, literally laughed. "See you in court, counselor. My clients are going to own your client." I hung up the phone and looked at Ethan. "They chose this," I said. "I gave them an out. I gave them one last chance to just walk away." "They don't want to walk away," Ethan said, taking my hand. "They want to win. They need to beat you to feel superior." "Well," I said, picking up the file labeled "The Receipts," "they are about to learn the difference between feeling superior and actually being right." The night before the trial, I didn't sleep. I didn't pace. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every insult, every rejection, every moment of neglect. I wasn't hurting anymore. I was sharpening those memories into a blade. Tomorrow, the world would see the truth. Tomorrow, the golden child, the narcissists, and the scapegoat would all play their final roles. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and old wood. It was colder than I expected. My parents sat on the plaintiff's side. Frank wore a suit that was slightly too large, another tactic to look frail and shrunken. Linda was wearing a gray dress, no makeup, clutching a rosary. Tiffany sat in the gallery, glaring at the back of my head. The judge, the Honorable Sarah P. Reynolds, was a woman in her 60s with glasses perched on the end of her nose and a reputation for having zero patience for nonsense. Gorski opened with a theatrical speech about the sacred bond of family. "Your Honor," he said, gesturing to my parents, "these two people gave their lives for their daughter. They fed her, clothed her, educated her. And now, in their hour of twilight, as they face illness and poverty, their daughter, a multi-millionaire who lives in a palace, refuses to spare a crumb. This is not just a legal failing, it is a moral outrage." He called Linda to the stand. She cried on cue. She talked about how much she loved me. She talked about how hard it was to heat their house. She lied with a fluency that was terrifying. "I just want my daughter back," she sobbed. "I don't care about the money. I just want her to care." "Thank you, Mrs. Harris," Gorski said, handing her a tissue. "Your witness." Sterling stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He didn't look like a shark today. He looked like a surgeon. "Mrs. Harris," Sterling began softly, "you claim you are destitute, correct?" "We have nothing left," Linda wept. "And you claim you spent your life savings supporting Bianca?" "Yes, every penny." Sterling walked back to our table and picked up a single piece of paper. The courtroom was silent. "Mrs. Harris, do you recognize this signature?" He put the document on the overhead projector. It was the withdrawal slip for the $80,000 trust fund. Linda blinked. She squinted at the screen. Her crying stopped abruptly. I'm not sure," she stammered. "It is a withdrawal from the Margaret Davis Education Trust," Sterling said, "dated 10 years ago. The signature reads Bianca Harris. Did you sign this?" "No, of course not," Linda said too quickly. "That's interesting," Sterling said, "because we have a sworn affidavit from the notary public, Miss Jenkins, your bridge partner, stating that you brought this document to her, And we have a handwriting analysis confirming that this is your handwriting, not Bianca's. Gorski stood up. Objection! This is ambush! It goes to credibility, Your Honor, Sterling said calmly, and unclean hands. The plaintiff claims she supported my client. In reality, she stole $80,000 of my client's inheritance to fund a wedding for her other daughter. The judge peered over her glasses at Linda. Overruled. Answer the question, Mrs. Harris. Linda was pale. It was family money. We needed it. So you admit you forged the signature? Linda looked at Frank. Frank looked at the floor. Let's move on, Sterling said, relentless. You claim to be destitute. You stated in your deposition that you have no other assets. Is that correct? Yes, we are broke. Sterling picked up another document. The nuclear bomb. Then, can you explain, Sterling said, his voice dropping an octave, why you listed an account with the Bank of Cayman containing $450,000 on a life insurance application dated 3 years ago? The air left the room. Frank's head snapped up. Tiffany gasped in the gallery. Sterling projected the document. There it was, Frank and Linda's names, the account number, the balance. And, Sterling continued, why did you take out a $1 million policy on Bianca's life without her knowledge? Linda was shaking. That was for retirement. We were investing. So, you aren't broke? Sterling asked. You committed perjury in your financial affidavit to this court? Linda couldn't speak. She looked at Gorski. Gorski looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Your Honor, Sterling said, turning to Judge Reynolds, the plaintiffs are not destitute. They are tax evaders who have committed fraud against my client, fraud against the IRS, and perjury in your courtroom. This lawsuit is nothing but an extortion attempt. Judge Reynolds stared at my parents. Her expression was no longer neutral. It was disgusted. Mr. Harris, stand up, the judge commanded. Frank stood up, his legs shaking. Is this account real? She asked. I can explain, Frank stammered. Is it real? Yes, Frank whispered. The sound of the gavel hitting the wood was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Case dismissed with prejudice, Judge Reynolds barked. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into fraud, forgery, and perjury. I am also referring this to the IRS. She looked at Gorski. And you, counselor, are going to be reported to the Bar Association for bringing a frivolous suit without due diligence. But, Gorski started. Sit down, the judge yelled. Then she looked at me. Her face softened slightly. Miss Sterling, I am sorry you had to go through this. You are free to go. I stood up. I looked at my parents. Linda was sobbing for real now. Frank was slumped in his chair, looking like a deflated balloon. Tiffany was already running for the exit, trying to distance herself from the disaster. I walked over to the plaintiff's table. Sterling tried to stop me, but I waved him off. I leaned down so only Frank and Linda could hear me. You told me I didn't deserve help, I whispered. You were right. I didn't need your help, but you're going to need a lot of it where you're going. I turned around and walked out of the courtroom. The double doors swung shut behind me with a heavy, final thud. Outside, the reporters were waiting. I didn't stop. I walked straight to Ethan, who was waiting by the car. It's over? He asked. It's done, I said. They didn't just lose. They destroyed themselves. I got into the car, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't check the rearview mirror. If you're enjoying seeing justice served, smash that like button. It helps the channel, and it lets me know you stand with the cycle breakers. The aftermath wasn't swift. It was a slow, grinding disintegration of everything my parents had built. The district attorney didn't go easy on them. With the evidence presented in the civil trial, the criminal charges stuck. Frank and Linda were charged with grand larceny for the trust fund theft and tax evasion for the offshore accounts. To avoid a lengthy prison sentence, they took a plea deal. They had to pay back the $80,000 to me, which I immediately donated to a charity for foster kids, pay massive fines to the IRS, and serve 2 years of house arrest. But the real punishment wasn't the law. It was the lifestyle. The IRS seized the hidden accounts. The bank foreclosed on their house because they couldn't pay the mortgage. The dealership was sold for scraps to pay their legal fees. They lost the country club membership. They lost the Lexus. They lost the respect of their community. They moved into a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a run-down part of town. Tiffany, realizing the money tap was permanently dry, stopped visiting them. She divorced Chad and moved to another state, looking for a new victim to support her. The golden child abandoned the ship the moment it stopped looking like a yacht. As for me, 6 months after the trial, I walked down an aisle, not in a church, but in the rose garden of my home in Evergreen Heights. I wore a dress I bought with my own money. The guests were people who truly loved us, my employees, Ethan's family, and my friends. And walking me down the aisle wasn't my father. It was Aunt Carol. She looked beautiful. She squeezed my arm as we walked toward Ethan. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she whispered. "She helped me get here," I said, thinking of the letter Carol had sent me in the dark years. When I reached the altar, Ethan took my hand. His grip was warm and solid. I looked around at the faces smiling at us. There was no pretense here, no performance. No one was here for the money or the status. They were here for us. I realized then that family isn't about whose DNA you share. It's not about obligation or guilt. Family is a choice. It's the people who stand by you when you're broke. It's the people who cheer for you when you win, not because they want a cut, but because they are happy for you. My parents tried to break me. They tried to make me feel small so they could feel big. But in the end, they gave me the greatest gift of all. By casting me out, they forced me to build my own world. They forced me to become strong. They forced me to realize that my worth wasn't determined by their approval. The other day, I got a letter from the prison system. It was a notification about Frank's probation status. I didn't open it. I walked over to the shredder in my office and fed it through. I watched the paper turn into confetti. I went out to the balcony where Ethan was playing with our new puppy. The sun was setting over the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. I took a deep breath. The air tasted clean. It tasted like freedom. That's my story. It's a long road from a stolen inheritance to a multi-million-dollar empire, but every step was worth it. Thank you so much for listening. If this story resonated with you, please type A in the comments so I know you made it to the end. It means the world to me. Until next time, keep building your fortress.